Tabletop is brought to you by the following sponsor.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Welcome back to Tabletop, everyone. Today we're doing something a little bit new. We're actually going to be diving into the new module released by Wizards of the Coast for D&D, Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. Did I get that right, Shade?
You nailed it.
Awesome, cool. It's like we did this before, and then the internet destroyed our audio.
No, that would never happen. That would never happen.
Well, why don't we start at the beginning? This is a module from Wizards of the Coast, but it's a little bit different. It has a new crew writing it, and also it kind of takes place in a brand new sort of setting that's not, or place, I guess, that hasn't been explored before. So why don't you give us like an intro of what the whole deal with this module is?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, this is a collective crew, a very diverse crew of individuals that haven't really necessarily worked entirely on some of the other releases. Although I'm sure I don't know everyone's bibliographies. I apologize. But in any case, it's a fantastic group, and they have put together this new kind of planar hub called the Radiant Citadel, which is situated in the ethereal plane, a transient plane, and connected to the material plane. So unlike Sigil, which is really connected to all these outer planes, and is ruled by the Lady of Pain, a godlike figure with inscrutable thoughts and desires.
Motivations.
Yeah, motivations, that's the word that I really wanted there. The Radiant Citadel is ran by a council of 15 individuals that are elected. They have terms, and they're mortal. I will say there is one of them who is an ancient brass dragon.
Spoiler.
So yeah, but it's very well known. People know what's up. This humanoid has been around for longer than they should have been. People know what's going on.
They're like, man, Jeff, you've lived for like 300 years. What's going on?
But yeah, I mean, actually, I think it's 250 something is how much they'd been around. So yeah. So, this is interesting because it's mortals that are still very much connected in some part to their original civilizations. They actually have ways to go from the Radiant Citadel back to their home. Even if their home up and moves to a different world, it still can do this. And they have come together to form this kind of utopia that is built on goodwill, equity,
solid public services.
Solid public services. I mean, it's a caring society. But it's, even as a utopia, it doesn't mean that like the people within it are perfect. They have their own problems. They are complex characters, and they have differing opinions on how to run this society as well.
One thing that we talked about a little bit before, and something that still is really fascinating to me, is that they did a huge amount of design work in making the Radiant Citadel, and like this, it's really fleshed out. It feels like a real place with mysteries and like weird contrast between, like you said, this sort of utopian vibe, but then like the ethereal nightmare outside their windows. But also, it's really interesting to me that they put that much design into this place, only to have most of the adventures actually not take place in the Radiant Citadel. It's more the hub, the loading screen that you hop out of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can invest your players in the Radiant Citadel as much as you want, but ultimately, to run the adventures, the Radiant Citadel kind of takes this back seat. It is the hub from which I would certainly run things, or I would get you there at some point. But you don't have to do that. The adventures each have good explanations on, okay, here's how you would situate or set this in your worlds, so you can contextualize this civilization that your adventure is going to be taking place around through the Radiant Citadel. You can contextualize it in the Forgotten Realms. You can actually, I just clicked on one that I hadn't really read much of. You can contextualize it through Ravenloft, which is wonderful.
Don't make me go back to Ravenloft, please. Let me stay in the Radiant Citadel.
I'm so excited about that, and I can't wait to read more about this particular adventure. It's only been out a few days, and I've gone through a good chunk of the book, but it's in that fashion. It's like, okay, I've got to pour through it real quick because I'm a greedy little monster who has to see all the cool stuff instead of a thoughtful, like, I'm going to read everything cover to cover. And I'm now in the midst of that, but it hadn't gotten to this particular bit.
So since all of the civilizations are essentially elect a representative, does that mean that, I'm just seeing the potential for like a homebrew adventure or whatever that's essentially like Strahd trying to influence the elections from the people of Ravenloft and like trying to get somebody that he controls, like a puppet Strahd, like onto the council?
So, because I just read this I just saw this Ravenloft a little bit. I can't say that explicitly, but yes, absolutely. I do know, for example, the dragon that I was speaking on. That is, I'll just go ahead and bring that character up. Shola is a legendary figure in the history of the Citadel, and she's this famed ancient brass dragon of this civilization called Akarin Sangar, and she is, she takes this form of an older humanoid and brown-skinned humanoid, it says, and she has a complex relationship with her homeland. She loves her homeland, but it has a ruler, and I'm not going to spoil this, but it has this ruler that she has a very tenuous relationship with, I'll say. And so she actually doesn't agree with this ruler and would probably want to oppose, but she's trying to play this political game, but very worried about the way this ruler is handling her world, or her civilization, I should say, her native land. And that's compelling because that can have impacts, and there are specific rules for how individuals are elected to the ruling group, which are called the Speakers for the Ancestors, the ruling body, and they have to be connected to the native land, the founding native land, and they have to be elected to the position. And then they have to be approved by these things called the Dawn Incarnates, which are these fascinating, I just love these so much. They're these collections of spirits bound within gemstones, and they take the forms of animals. And so there's sometimes spirits that have just wandered through the ethereal plane, and there's spirits that are from the same place, and so they kind of congeal together into this one entity. But the Dawn Incarnates are spirits from the most recent founding civilizations for the Radiant Citadel, and so they are big. They are, huge or large creatures that have hundreds, thousands of souls within them, and all of this knowledge, this institutional knowledge, as a result. And so they have to say, yes, this elected leader is good. So there is still, interestingly enough,
checks and balances.
Yeah, and there are some major checks and balances, in fact, because if one of the speakers for the ancestors dies or leaves office early before their term was up, stuff breaks down instantly. Wells run dry, plants stop growing, lighting just stops. And if it's and stuff needs to be resolved within 30 days.
So it's like basically your basic services of government are not going to be working unless everyone is represented within government. That's really an interesting idea. Is that like a magicked thing that's like magicked into the Radiant Citadel, or is it?
They're bound to the Radiant Citadel. They actually can't even leave for that for all that long. It's very interesting.
It's also like again, I guess we should say again, even though we're talking so much about the Radiant Citadel, that most of the adventures take place outside of the Radiant Citadel. But it's so interesting because part of me wants to really explore in a campaign setting sort of a place where, in air quotes, like a utopia has been founded where people are feeling safe and secure with their needs are met. And then what happens then when you like are people inherently going to try to like take more for themselves? Are they still going to have these infighting moments of like who gets more resources, or like how is that resolved within the Radiant Citadel? And like you said, like how does it work when people like these ancestors with all this institutional knowledge are actually it sounds like a very conservative check and balance on power. Like imagine if all of the old senators had to agree on a new senator being elected in the United States. You would have really bad people still elected. Not that they're much better now, but it's like interesting that you could build in like some really interesting stories along all of these lines, and that's not even the focus of the campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the cool things about this book is because it's presenting first the Citadel, but then it also presents these civilizations in the material plane, and these civilizations are tied to the Citadel, and they all do clearly have different priorities, different concerns, and there is, very clearly like a kind of like a delicate struggle, an ebb and flow, and it's you can be in this utopia, but it takes the work. It is something that you have to buy into it, and actually that's somewhat literal. I do want to get to the adventures, but just about the Radiant Citadel, you have to pay a price to enter. Now, this is a land of immigrants, it's a land of refugees, and it's a land of convalescents. So they don't turn people away. If you have nothing to pay, then you enter freely, and they will give you the services freely. There's public housing. It's fine. You'll get it. But if you're deep pocketed, they expect you to pay your share, but they don't actually set it up so that it's like, well, we see that you earn this much back home, whatever, so you got to pay this much to enter. No, it's pay what you feel is right, which is interesting. And sometimes that might be an artifact, an item, a story. It's not necessarily something that has an immediate intrinsic value.
So like an archmage could come into the Citadel and then like teach a type of magic that he developed, and that is his entrance price or something like that.
Correct, yeah. And I think that's really fun. But they do, and this is actually where I was kind of driving towards this, the section on the Citadel itself does talk about tariffs and taxation. So, they're able to grow a lot of their food, they're able to maintain livestock, things like that, but there is, they still import and export things, and back to their original civilizations or from them, and there are costs for that, and it's heavy taxations on that kind of activity. And so, there's a lot of social commentary. I mean, there's even a section on law enforcement and justice, and they very clearly state that yes, there is someone to ensure that laws are enforced, that justice is had, but there are also mental health care experts. This is the House of Convalescence, and it's really interesting. It's about rehabilitation and restorative justice for addressing wrongs rather than, penalizing in some fashion. So
I have a quick question because I haven't read this book as much as you have. So when it comes to resource gathering, are there civilizations that are taken, like the original 15 civilizations that are not in the Radiant Citadel? They're like back wherever, on whatever plane they are. Are they continuously, are there people there that are providing for the Radiant Citadel and not able to partake in it? Is there any sort of struggle there that's talked about, or?
So I am not aware of any particular struggle like that. It talks about the resources being limited, but it also talks about recycling, reusing things where they can, conservation of materials, but I should clarify. I did say that I misspoke and said that there was the ability to really kind of have livestock. Livestock is mostly imported. They grow greenery, but they do import livestock. So there's a local market. You have a basic income. This is not something where, this isn't a place where, a steak is going to come at a cheap price. You're not going to just have a hamburger for lunch because you feel like paying $1 for lunch or whatever. No, if you're having a hamburger, it's going to probably cost you more than if you just had, a salad or something like that, because that had to be imported, and there are high tariffs associated with that. So there is, that balance with the civilizations outside, but there's at no point did I see anything that said, but these outside civilizations are, the working class and only the elites can live in. No, it's to the contrary. This is meant to be if this is a place of refuge, this is a place you can live.
So we've really, dove into the Radiant Citadel, and we could probably continue talking, and we probably will talk
forever.
Setting the table on the Radiant Citadel. But let's talk more about the actual module itself. So it's adventures 1 through level 14. You also were talking to me earlier about this kind of big mystery that overhangs all of it, of where are the other founding civilizations, because there wasn't originally 15, there was 21, 27?
27, I believe.
27. Yeah. And so there's all of this stuff happening, but run us through what kind of content is it? Is it a dungeon crawl? Is it what kind of module is it similar to in the canon of Wizard of the Coast products right now?
Yeah, so I think an easy comparison. There are two decent comparisons to this to previous content from Wizards in 5th edition, and that is Tales from the Yawning Portal, which is an anthology of adventures, and it's kind of a dungeon crawl-esque, but probably closer is going to be Candlekeep. Okay. Which is, a collection of adventures that are they're meant to be mysteries. These adventures are not necessarily mysteries, and each adventure is written by a different writer, and they are, they have a variety of goals. They have a variety of characters. The NPCs presented in each of these adventures they're not weak. They're not looking for your characters to solve every little problem. What they are is they're competent people who know what they're doing, and they just have had a hardship or a challenge that has come up that they either need specific assistance with, expertise with, or they can't do alone, so they need you to come with them. That's kind of the flavor on that. There are dungeon elements. There is combat. But there are plenty of ways to resolve a lot of the issues through role-playing means. There's exploration in this as well.
That's really interesting to me because on our storytelling episode, like I think a month ago now with Michael, he was talking about how in a lot of design elements that violence is the natural outcome and the solution for most of your problems. And it's really like I'm actually really interested in diving in and seeing like the different ways they offer you to solve that, because that is built into D&D and it's like core DNA, and it kind of sounds like they're doing some interesting stuff design wise to like offer you some other stuff too.
They're certainly trying, and I do want to say that it is still 5th edition. Combat's almost certainly going to happen.
Yeah.
I love D&D, but it is a failing in some respects. Combat has a heavy presence. And that conversation with Michael was fantastic. I'll just kind of run through a brief description. This is in the opening chapter. Welcome to the Radiant Citadel. So again, each of these adventures are meant to be 4 to 6 players, and they're meant for this level. But you could adjust things to accommodate less or more, fewer or more. I don't know which one of those is more accurate. Players as well as different levels. So the first one is Salted Legacy, and it's a conflict between rival night market vendors. And there's this hunt for a mysterious saboteur and a series of whimsical contests. So,
so cool.
This is a first through second level adventure. And, one of the things I will say kind of about these adventures in general, in addition to giving background, I think I may have spoken to the fact that there's a section on thoughtful introductions at the beginning of the book. And, it really addresses this point that, these are a wide breadth of civilizations that are all different and diverse and unique in their own way. So it has some great advice on how to address that, including advice on how to address that in online and streamed formats. But that's at the top of the book. They do this also. They also have a great section in each of the adventures where, they give background. They also have sections on pronunciations, which is fantastic. I mean, how often have we stumbled? I think I tried to say the dragon's name just a few minutes ago, and I wasn't 100% because I'm not sure I've seen a pronunciation guide for that. And
I mean, we've talked about it before too, that fantasy pronunciations are oftentimes just pure nonsense chaos. So
that's fair, but it's worth noting that these civilizations, they are born out of they were born from members of the Dungeons and Dragons community with connections to various real world cultures and mythologies.
No, totally. I guess what I was trying to say when I said that was that oftentimes it's the wild west on how to pronounce anything when it comes to a fantasy thing.
Dragon's name.
The fact that they're giving you the resources to have a little bit more of a place to start from is actually really, really useful.
yeah, absolutely. And that's because this may not be a community that you're a part of, and that's extremely helpful and thoughtful. So this first level adventure, this first second level adventure, is fantastic. It's this as I said, this rivalry between these two market families, and you are diving right into the center of this kind of like family feud.
Is there a Romeo and Juliet insert?
So I won't I won't spoil too much. I'll leave it as you are trying to kind of navigate this feud, and you are also ingratiating yourself within the communities here and participating in these fun, strange games. And I will go ahead and spoil at least one thing. One of the games is the Battle Prawn Challenge.
So good.
And it is wild.
I would definitely play that.
These
is
are
it
not,
like a betting game, or is it sort of like a weird like animal handling sort of thing that you're doing? So
the actual challenge.
Are you able to equip your battle prawn with things that you find?
I'll go and just read you this. Massive bundles of green tree beans cover both preparation tables. Participants must chop or mash the beans with various cooking knives at the table, their own tools or other methods. Each pile is a single small object with, its AC and HP and various immunities. And your challenge here really is to do this. It's a cooking challenge essentially, and so you're given some vegetation that you need to prepare, but part of it is the prawn preparation, and this is an 8-foot long gigantic prawn that you have to fight.
So it's not so much like battle prawns like battle bots where you both send prawns in. That's kind of what I was imagining. It's more like we have this monster prawn you have to wrestle.
Yes, exactly.
I love that. So good.
Yeah. And yeah, there's also like a hide and seek challenge and a few other things, and I think a battle arena. So again, fighting is still here, but
in a fun way. Like, it's actually, this is like pretty striking because a lot of older first, second, third level modules are fairly lethal because they just kind of throw people into, like, I don't know, a mine full of cold bolts that you're gonna just get destroyed in if you aren't careful. And I feel like this is really interesting because all the things that you're talking about are kind of like the carousing mechanic that came out in one of the expansions where
Xanathar's.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not so much like you're going and beating up monsters to get and getting real buff. It's more like you're experiencing the city, and by experiencing the city you're growing, and so that means that you're going to take those first level ups, which I think is actually a pretty brilliant way to do it, so that you can let your players get comfortable, let them kind of settle into how to play whatever new class that they've picked, learn how to role play a little bit with all of these different encounters, wrestle a prawn, get the basic battle mechanics out, and then you're ready to take on a maybe a little bit more of a serious adventure afterwards that maybe has a little bit more stakes when it comes to danger.
Yeah, and I should note also, I talked about how there's pronunciation guides and things like that. There's also these gazetteers at the end of each of these chapters that provides a breadth of details about, it's like a map and noteworthy sites and what life is like here, and how they respond to visitors, and every little detail you might want, as well as like a quick rundown of the major players in this area. So and also how to put your character there. They have advice on, like, hey, do you want your character to have been native to the civilization? Here are some things that you need to think about.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, okay, so we've talked about, like, low-level play and the basic setting and, like, the stuff you'll be doing. I feel like all of what I've heard out of the modules means that you're going to have, like, a lot of interesting things in the middle. But let's talk a little bit about high-level play for folks who maybe have a campaign that have been going on for a little while and they want to jump in towards the end of some of the modules, the, like, 14th level play kind of thing. What sort of stuff should they be expecting to be looking at when it comes to play styles and also what they're going to be doing? Is it still like a broad mix, or is it like a specific mystery that they're solving? What's kind of going on in the upper levels of play?
Yeah, so the one that I am probably one of the ones I'm most excited for is the 14th level, and this is really one of the last adventures. It is the last adventure, I believe, and it's called Orchids of the Invisible Mountain. And this is a adventure that I'm almost certain that I will run, so I don't want to spoil it too much.
No worries.
But this is one that, because it's high level play, it takes place in the material plane, but it's not limited to it. It takes place in an area that is intrinsically connected to the Feywild, and it has some kind of threat from the Far Realm happening.
That's cool.
So
I love the Far Realm.
You get, yeah, absolutely, and you get to kind of experience, that planar travel aspect there. And the adventure, though, is still, there are combat beats, but there are also meaningful decisions that you have to make that will, I think, challenge the players. And, of course, I think characters that would be somewhat more surprising, or challenges that would be somewhat more surprising at lower level, that you'll find here. I'm trying to really tread this line.
No, this is great. I'm just getting excited. I'm like, oh boy, I better take some utility spells. One thing I wanted to kind of ask, I want to pop back to this, but it came into my head while we were talking. How does the Radiant Citadel modules reward players for completing things when, the actual hub of the Radiant Citadel doesn't really have like a financial sort of, basis, because it has all of this kind of like public services? How are you as a DM rewarding your characters? Is it still like gold, go spend it on like things, or is it like, hey, you found this other planar weapon or thing that you haven't seen before, and like, hey, it's cool, you should add it to your list?
Sure. So it's going to depend on the adventure itself. There's a 5th level adventure titled The Wages of Vice, and that, just depending on, regardless of what decisions you make at the end, you're going to get a oh man, I don't want to spoil too much here. So if you're worried about these spoilers, folks, you get a magic item, I'll say, and then some gold, and so it's pretty standard in that for that particular adventure. But I'll go back to the Orchids of the Invisible Mountain. That one, you're going to get a magic item that is fitted to high level play.
Ooh, that's cool. I love that.
So there is still that reward structure, and I would say fairly standard. I don't feel that we have played, and I know that every table is different, but I certainly don't play in a lot of tables where gold is the prime reward at the end.
Yeah.
The reward is a job well done, or a magic item, maybe. The reward is accomplishing your tasks, but these, these magic items and tangible things are still a part of these adventures. I think, really, though, back to my point about a job well done, they have great suggestions on character hooks for each of these adventures, and it's resolving the hook. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a storytelling game, and the conclusion of the story is, in a lot of ways, kind of the satisfaction. There is one other section that I did want to talk about. It's the very end of the book, and it's called Beyond the Radiant Citadel. So this is a section that so I mentioned in our original attempt at this recording, and I can't recall if we alluded to it. I don't know if I really said it, but because of the missing civilizations, there are these 12 civilizations that are missing, and this this little section kind of dives into lands known as the Taib Empire and Umizu. These are two recent additions to the Radiant Citadel, and they are kind of like proof that, okay, we might recover these other lost civilizations, because originally 13 civilizations kind of reform everything, but then, as I said, it's 15 now. So there's information about these two places, and there are tables to kind of like help you set up adventures, but they're not adventures, and they're relatively small tables, but they're not fully fleshed out adventures. So
they're just like a bunch of hooks that you can kind of throw together and make something.
Right. And so this is kind of like the hook for, so who are those other missing civilizations then? And here's how you might then go on to go, okay, let's go even further. And I think
to Ravenloft.
Well, that's not a missing one. Everyone knows where that is.
Yeah, honestly, it sounds like this module is my cup of tea. It also just sounds like a very fun, very specific yet not limiting setting where you can sort of, it kind of sounds like, and a lot of, modules do this, where you could start with the level 1, level 2 adventure, and then your characters are like, this place fucking rocks. Let's now like go off on this other thing. You like had that one improv line about like the sad like witch who lives in a tower and like whatever, and then you're off on your own adventure out of the Radiant Citadel, and maybe the witch is like your quest giver who's like sending you to different realms and like popping back in. Like, it sounds kind of like a brilliant move to on these designers' parts to create such an interesting hub land rather than like a completely new setting, because this hub is like so interesting that people are gonna, like, I guarantee that people are gonna want to spend and will set a whole campaign just in the city. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But I mean, on the flip side of that, they spent such a considerable, and this was a bias of my own because I just love interplanar hubs and things like that. I'm a sucker for them, so I spent an undue amount of time talking about it, and I also didn't want to spoil any of the adventures too much, I'll be honest.
Sure.
So but each of the adventures does such a great job spending the time and care with those civilizations, and I think that is something that I really love about this as well, because maybe you've got a setting like I do in the Forgotten Realms, and you're like, okay, I mean, Waterdeep's great, and I could have them play here forever, but what if I wanted to do something elsewhere in the Forgotten Realms? It's a big world. Toril is massive. Let's talk about some of the rest of the sort of Faerun, and this is a great way to do that, and then your characters may connect really with this society. They may say, oh wow, I really want to spend even more time here in Zinda, which is where you spend your time in the 5th level adventure. And this is something that I think they have equipped you well to do. Or I apologize, I said Zinda, it's Zinda. My apologies. I should have referred to the...
Hey, those pronunciation guides, they come in for the win at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's made worse by the fact that I literally call a writing instrument a pen, P-I-N. Despite the fact that I know it's spelled P-E-N, my mouth just doesn't do it half the time.
Can't do it.
So...
All right, so So kind of taking this as a holistic thing, I know that we've only kind of touched upon a lot of it, but it's as this is a overview of the entire module. Is this sort of a buy, borrow, or pass?
Oh, buy this book 100%. Buy this book because it is going to, at its core, it's going to give you all these great adventures, and it's going to give you an opportunity to have intriguing plot hooks, intriguing mysteries, and really just fun adventures that I think are pretty well balanced from everything I've seen. But beyond that, it's going to inspire you on your own world building. It's also, I think, a book that does a great job kind of tying together hope and aspiration with real world complexness.
Like, it's literally built into the physical station in which the Radiant Citadel is situated, like in the ethereal plane, like maelstroms all around.
Yeah.
And this like bastion of place where people are trying, it seems it's very well done thematically.
Yeah, I love roaming exploration and planar hubs and things like that. So I'm very biased, but this is the adventure book you should buy for 5th edition.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It kind of reminds me of Waterdeep in that it gives you such a cool set of tools in which you don't even have to like use the book exactly to be able to get out a huge amount of value to put into your own campaigns. Like in Waterdeep, it had that like calendar of events essentially that you could base like a whole thing around too. And this module seems to have like really done the legwork, basically providing you with 15 fleshed out civilizations to base campaigns in, as well as this cool hub for interplanar kind of campaigns. It's just very well done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would have to agree. It's a buy. And we'll be back soon, I think, for when Spelljammer drops. We'll kind of take a look at that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to bore everyone about Spelljammer.
and now you have a point of contrast to be like, is it Sigil or is it the Radiant Citadel? Which one is the fun place that you want to spend your time? Maybe we can sway you away from Spelljammer a little bit.
Do both. No. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it right now, folks.
Like, absolutely not.
No, you do both because you can. That's the point of the of these games.
All right. Well, thanks, Shade, for doing some of the legwork, looking through all of this with only a few days after it's come out. I'm sure that we'll pop back. I would love to do a setting the table in either one of the civilizations or in the Radiant Citadel so that we can talk a little bit more about it after we've had some time to really steep in it. And I guess we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Tabletopped. If you're interested in talking with us, please send us an email at tabletoppedpodcast@gmail.com. Or you could follow us on Twitter @Tabletopped. Our DMs are open. If you like the show, please do the things that podcasts tell you to do. Subscribe, rate, share with friends. And if you don't like the show, may I suggest sharing with enemies? I mean, that would show them, right? Thanks again to everyone who follows the show, and we will see you next week for more episodes of Tabletopped.